Ladies, gentlemen, welcome back to another Both Sides podcast. We're here, fortunately, today with the Managing Director and Sales Director of Coastal, Dane Atherton and Rob Forde. Welcome.
Great to be here.
Thanks for having us.
Mate, it's been a long time coming. I used to work, not work with Rob Forde, but Rob Forde was at Harcourts while I was at Harcourts about a decade ago, while Dane Atherton was cleaning up all the international awards.
Back in the Balcombe Hills days, I remember it well.
Back in the Balcombe Hills days. So it's a journey back blast in the past. And
shout out to Drano and Jamie Benjamin if you're listening.
Don't listen, don't worry about that. But it's going to be, it's a very, very interesting podcast for me, because personally, to watch you from the outside in and watching your business explode to a $2+ billion transaction a year business, and watching you, Rob, from being, someone that was just going out there recruiting agents, then becoming a CEO, now becoming the sales director of a $2+ billion transaction business. It's an insane story. So, guys, first of all, where I'd like to kickstart this off is I met you guys at Harcourts. That's where you were first off. You've now changed. It's now Coastal. It's a big change. What happened?
Great question. You're starting off with a banger.
Just straight into it.
Straight into it.
Do you want me to start this one?
Yeah, you go, mate. You lead the way.
First and foremost, Harcourts is a great organisation, and it's been a great part of our journey. There's no doubt about that. We started in June 2011. And Kim and I, my wife, took over a business that was already in the market. So Harcourts was a brand that was already in the market. We had no desire at that point to use our name, or, we wanted to just slot into an industrial strength brand that we could go and grow a business from. And that's been, reality is if we were still with Harcourts, it would still be working really well. But we got to a point, and look, we could really unpack the whole decision-making process that Rob and I went through, because
it was pretty funny.
Like a year leading up to the decision, one day I'd be like, yep, we're going independent. The next day Rob would be like, yep.
Well, it was funny. He'd be independent and I'd be like, no, we just got to tuck ourselves in, stay the line, it's working. Don't, let's not break it. And then the next day Danny come in like, no, you're right. I think we just stay the path. And I'm like, now I'm thinking we're going independent. We were just, it was hilarious.
So it was a very big, drawn out process in our minds. Probably from the outside, and no one saw that. But literally every day for a year, we were having the conversation because we didn't want to be very flippant. Like, it's a huge decision, as you said. But what it came down to for us is that feeling of your own identity. And I do think there is a capacity to, when a business gets to a certain size, whether franchises remain relevant. And that's just the reality for us, and it's the way we felt. You're on this level here today with our head office in terms of marketing and in terms of the infrastructure we have here. It rivals a head office of a state or a country. Correct. For a franchise group. So there was that double up part. But Harcourts is definitely still part of our DNA. They're a great organisation, and a lot of the great attributes that we learnt from being around awesome leadership and awesome businesses in that company, you'll see remnants of that in our business now. But definitely since April this year, since we did switch to Coastal and we had our own identity, it's been probably one of the best decisions we've ever made.
And I think part of it as well, like you look at the way that people, yourselves, us, the agents, consumers deal with brands now, and I think it has changed a bit. Like, people are wanting that more boutique, independent sort of feel, and that's something that we felt particularly in this market with what we were dealing with. So that was something that was hard to sort of ignore, and definitely now on the other side of that, you can feel it.
So how about the pushback? Did you have there's going to be agents and agencies that are thinking of moving brands, moving agencies. What would you say to them about the concern of the pushback and drop in business?
Agents or agencies?
Both.
Yeah, well, I think two different things. One, from a business perspective, so start with that. I think it's one of the things I think you need to get to a level, because I think if we had have done the change when we were maybe half the size, quarter of the size of what we were, I think it would have been really difficult to have the same impact that we did, because you just don't have that market penetration and the brand awareness and the knowledge. And the interesting thing was that we really internally, Coastal was very strong. So the whole everyone inside the business knew Coastal. We almost considered ourselves Coastal. Externally, on the general public front, everyone knew Harcourts. So when we made the change, we just assumed that the marketplace was going to realise that it was Coastal, but a lot of them didn't.
I thought that from Sydney, you know.
Yeah, seeing it as internally the Coastal
as
thing.
Coastal, yeah.
But you were part of Harcourts, so you knew back in the day. You knew that Coastal thing
So
for a long
you had
time.
a big push back here.
Not from internally, but the marketplace just didn't know.
Really?
They didn't understand to the level that we thought. They were kind of like, oh, who are you guys? You've come out of nowhere and you're everywhere.
I wouldn't have expected that.
Yeah.
No, we didn't. And it's funny because when we had different marketing consultants come in when we were exploring the process, the guy who we ultimately went with was Justin Martin. And I remember, who's fabulous, amazing designer. And I remember when I spoke to him on the phone, he said, look, I'm just letting you know I don't like generic names. I like surnames. And I straight away I thought, well, let's see how you feel when you come here. He walked in within about 5 minutes of him being in the business. He said, it's got to be Coastal.
Wow.
And he picked that up from talking to people. But Rob's absolutely right. What happened was we thought, oh, well, we're Coastal. We identify as Coastal. All the team identify as Coastal, which turns out that's the most important part.
Yeah.
Because if your team connects with it, then they'll stay together and they go to market. And definitely there was a lot of consumers that they didn't make the connection. I remember going to a presentation with one of our top agents to a big riverfront, and I went in there with all, surely they know who we are. And they literally, halfway through the presentation, the guy said, so who are you guys? And I'm like, wow, okay. Yeah. I did not expect that. But being at the coalface, that was actually really, really valuable for me because I came back and thought, geez, if we're getting that there, that's actually really interesting. But it turned out to be an advantage because what we've looked like to the marketplace is this new dynamic brand that's had accelerated growth. It wasn't great for the first week or two, but now as months go on, people are saying your signs are everywhere. Like
we've the momentum from the brand you can really feel now.
A new explosion.
It has, and it looks like we've come out of nowhere, which is not a bad thing because what we didn't want to be is a reincarnation of Harcourts. A step to the left, we're still blue. We wanted to be a whole new identity. So I guess you can't have that without having that little phase at the beginning where people are asking who you are. But we did a really good rollout internally and externally, to the marketplace and to our team. Obviously, the team rollout is the most important to keep them together, because these days, you switch on REA, you got a new brand, it's in the market, your signage.
400 signboards over the weekend changed over, so it was all orchestrated pretty well.
But what we found is like when you're small, a franchise can make you look big, but when you're big, a franchise can make you look small. And that's how we felt. Because since we've actually come out with our own identity, and as you say, we've got 400 boards up, 400 listings online, we're everywhere, that visibility of, oh, geez, Coastal is everywhere versus, who really owns the Harcourts offices or the Ray White offices? Like,
I don't think people put it together that it was one business or, one owner operating all of those businesses. It was just a number of different Harcourts around. But Coastal was like, oh, this brand is everywhere. That's the main feedback. And
definitely in our market, like if you look back, say, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, the Gold Coast was very much a discretionary market, interstate market, where you'd have Sydney and Melbourne buyers typically coming up, and the recognition of a national brand was of value. And that was certainly the narrative that, 20 years ago that we were told. So as a result, there hadn't been many strong independents up until maybe the last 5-10 years. And we've got some really strong, awesome independent businesses here on the Gold Coast. And the rise of that definitely created this environment for us to, it's been at the back of our mind for a long time, but definitely that aesthetic expectation of your Sydney, Melbourne consumer coming up with that independent vibe. If you look at the businesses we admire around the country, they're independents. They've got strong, clear identity, amazing marketing. It's crisp, it's clean. If you were to invent a brand in 2024, 2025, it wouldn't be necessarily...
And that's what we wanted to do. If we were making a brand for the Gold Coast right now to suit what we're doing, what would that brand be? And sort of looking at where we were, and that's the hard thing, like with any franchise, it's not a brand that's been developed for that specific marketplace at that point in time. They've got a lot of, longevity that comes with it and a lot of great attributes, but also we just didn't feel it was reflective of what we were doing right now.
Because what's really amazing with you guys is I see you guys as building a brand as well as a real estate business. Like when you look at Harcourt, you don't really think of it as like a cool, unique, like modern brand, do you? Like,
can we show this just for the podcast people that are watching on video? Can we show your shoe? Can we get your shoe off and actually put it in front of a camera? Because I think it's going to be. This is the level. Anyone
that one's a bit.
Anyone
I should have brought my new ones.
Anyone that's watching on Spotify or watching the video on YouTube, actually bring up the video and look at these. That's the level of branding that these guys are doing. That is what Daniel's talking about.
So everyone in the company got a pair of those, by the way, when we launched, which was cool.
So for everyone on audio, they're Air Force Ones with a blue coastal tick.
We like to call it
that
bling.
also says coastal at the bottom of the Air Force Ones.
I remember
Insane.
speaking to Mark Kentwell from PRD before we did the brand launch, because he was about 6 months before us with Presence.
Yeah.
And I remember said to him, like, tell me about this, how's it gone and what do you think? And he said, well, put it this way. He said, I was with PRD for, 20 years. I never wore a PRD polo. He said, I can't take my Presence hat off, so the connection to the brand and even I remember Tommy McGlynn was talking about the merch factor. If your team wears your merch on the weekends, then you're doing something right. And I know that Brezig Whitney do a great capsule drop. They'll do I think they give their marketing department like a bit of a go and create some cool stuff. And that was kind of like we thought. We wanted to be a cool brand that happened to be in real estate. And the launch, when we go to our team, of course, we had a one-on-one with everyone in the weeks leading up, at least the weeks leading up, to let them know that it was happening. We didn't want to just go to the team and say, surprise guys, we're changing, because it would have been, the room vibe would have been more about like, I'm not digesting anything they're saying now, I'm just in shock. So we wanted to have a discussion before. So once we did that, we then created this. The Nikes actually came about because we wanted an involvement mechanism where when we go to the launch, if someone didn't order them, then that would be someone we would have to go towards. That was kind of why we did it. So
who wouldn't want to order a pair, right?
So when we launched them, we said, hey, by the way, we're having a company pair of Nikes. We had two versions, the Panda and the clean ones. It actually went the other way, where people ordered them for their kids, and it actually went. So it worked from that sense, where we got really good involvement, and that was also like a metaphor for we're actually doing it differently now, where we're not dressing as the first meeting to impress the client. We're actually dressing for the third or fourth meeting because we've got a relationship. So it's a little bit more of a casual, professional approach, more than that sort of glossy look at us.
You know what? In a personal aspect, I've now been wearing drawstring pants, Air Force Ones, and a white T-shirt. I walked into a listing appointment this week. They had 5 agents through. I walked up to the door. I got a call in, and I had no previous relationship. I walked to the door, and they said, Kevin, is that how you dress? And I said, and I was in shock. And I was like, oh, no, I'm losing the listing. And I'm like, yes. And they're like, you've got the listing.
Wow.
Straight away.
Yeah.
And I said, why? And they go, you're not a real estate agent. You're a normal person.
Yeah.
Come in. And thankfully, I nailed the listing presentation and I got the listing. But I think the perception out there is if you're going up against 3 people in suits and ties and they're looking like a professional.
It's definitely changed.
There's a guard up. They've all got a guard up. But you come in dressing like this, like this, like this, and like this. I think people have their guards down. They talk to you like you're a normal person. They open up more.
Guys, what I'm quite curious about hearing the story, if knowing what you know now, if you were to jump back to 2011 again, would you start Coastal or would you have still gone a franchise model?
Well, my answer is I wouldn't have changed a thing, because what I've learnt from Harcourts and what that organisation and the people in that organisation taught me is really made us, contributed massively to where we are now. And I think that connection to the business owners, Harcourts is a business where culturally and people, they really get that really right. They do an awesome job with that. They do. And that has really, really helped our business. There's no question about that.
Well, some of the businesses that I remember in the early days, you saying going over and seeing in New Zealand completely changed your...
Insane over there.
The size and scale of the businesses, the Martin Coopers, the Lynette and Johns, the Grenadiers and the Homewoods, these guys are proper juggernaut businesses that run amazing teams. And when I went over to visit them, when we first joined Harcourts, that was a huge part of the inspiration.
Eye-opening. Yeah.
Very eye-opening. I remember going to I remember I had this blockage about if you got big, you'd lose personal connection. And because all I could observe was what I was observing in my own market, where the bigger businesses didn't have that personal connection. And then I went to an awards night in Wellington a couple of years into starting with Harcourts, and I sat at one of the tables of Martin Cooper's office, who's, I don't even know how many offices Marty's got. He probably doesn't know. But huge.
Yeah.
I mean, they're like, I think 80 million GCI,
Whoa.
15, 20 offices, absolutely huge. And I sat at one of the tables and spoke to one of the agents and said, tell me about your experience at this business. Like, is it personal? He goes, yeah, Marty. We see Marty all the time. We talk to Marty like he's always available. Love it. And I thought, I came home from that going, you know what? That was actually my blockage, because you can still grow a bigger team and have personal connection. Rob and I don't sell. We don't manage properties. We're not in charge of that department. That's all we do is agent care.
Yeah.
Agent support, deal support, coaching, mentoring. That's what we do. So when you look at it, sometimes smaller businesses' principals actually have more commitment because they're listing and selling. They've got their fingers in property management, their fingers in marketing. And I find anyone who joins our business is probably pretty shocked how available we are.
Yeah.
And like if my phone rings more than twice and I don't answer it, it's pretty unusual.
Yeah.
In fact, I had Brody the other day say, that was quick. Well, that's what we do. You call, that's what we are here for. In saying that, I'll have a few missed calls now, but like it's...
So unless you're in the surf, you're getting...
That's right.
Yeah, exactly.
But we pride ourselves on that availability because that's all we do. And we specialise in agent support.
So it sounds like for you guys, plugging into a fast-moving business initially to build momentum and then transition once that momentum's created is a bit...
Yeah, well, for us, it was like, we got to remember when we started, no one knew who we were. We didn't have a brand. We didn't have agents. So going to the market as, who are you? Who's Dane? Who's Kim? Who's Coastal? Who's Atherton? It would have been a very hard slog, and I think it would have been a slower growth curve. We had a quicker growth curve because we had a vehicle, and that's where franchises are great. You've got a brand, you've got a vehicle, you've got colours, you've got a culture you can plug into. When and it's not everyone's journey, but for our journey, once we got to a certain level, we started to feel like our own identity was strong enough to stand on its own, and that's all it is. It's nothing sinister. It's just how it sort of develops, and strong enough to develop. And I think that we just felt like externally didn't represent what kind of business we actually were. Like we knew we were a powerful business, and we knew that. We had the best agents in the business, best support, best marketing, best property management, but the wrapping didn't necessarily represent that. Now we definitely feel like that's all aligned.
Can I ask you a question with two sorts of answers? We've got, I have a lot of people DMing me at the moment, asking me for assistance and help to make decisions about moves. And they're thinking about opening up their own agencies, and they're thinking about opening up their own independents. We've also got what you just touched on, which was the fact that you're available. It's a $2+ billion transaction business. You've got who knows how many staff. You're available 24/7 for all staff. How does an independent, one, grow to a point where they can still be connectable? And two, for example, someone like Daniel, where he's going to be buying and selling real estate eventually right around Australia. How does he end up, how do people like Daniel and other independents that grow end up being able to still be in touch with all of their staff just like you? Because I don't see that. I've seen businesses that are big, that transact lots of property and lots of money, but it might take a day or two to get to the CEO or to their managing director. Why has this happened?
Well, Rob, I reckon you should answer this because you've come from corporate.
Yeah.
You've come from,
I think
different
one
roles.
of the things that I observed, because looking at a lot of different businesses, from that franchise level and going into a lot of offices, one of the things that I noticed and always thought that Dane had done particularly well is not gotten distracted. So I remember we were always looking at, ways to implement with, finance or doing this or bringing this into the business and doing that. Very much it was always, no, it's just agents and recruitment. And unless you're sort of helping with that, that's just where the focus is. So I think the discipline around knowing what the job was and the vision, not so much vision, but knowing what you had to do to get to where you wanted to go, I think was really clear. And that's coming into the business here. I mean, the first day that I came on board was the Coastal 9-year anniversary out at Spices, and I was blown away. So the big thing one of the things we do is recognise tenures. So people's length of time with Coastal is recognised every year. So, the philosophy was you don't want to be here 10 years and receive a bunch of flowers and a scratchy and good luck. So it was, everyone's got an option, everyone's getting recruited. It's a competitive world. So once a year, we spend the time to focus on recognising everyone that's made the commitment to be with Coastal. And we genuinely appreciate it and genuinely want to recognise it. So we have a number of things that we do with, nights away, hotels, different gifts that we do that are substantial. But it's a true, reflection of us genuinely caring for the people that are taking the time. So I think in order to get big and wanting to get big, I think the biggest thing first is you just got to really care about your team and know what you're doing, because as soon as you learn that connection to actually want to help people out that are in your team, I think that's where it falls apart.
I think it's interesting to watch. I think agents now are smarter than they've ever been. And we've got a number of agents in our business that have gone and opened up real estate businesses and ultimately decided to either, some of them have sold to us, but some of them have actually just, dissipated those businesses and realised that's not what I want to do. I don't want to manage property management. I don't want to manage admin. I don't want to lay awake at night and think about, receptions late, insurance, subscriptions, people management, all those kinds of things which, they don't want to do. They want to list and sell. But if you're going to list and sell, like there's plenty of great vehicles that you can plug into. We've got business units in our team that do more than a lot of offices do. Like they'd actually take out awards at some lesser franchise groups, national awards, just their business units.
But I think that's a trend. So over, a decade ago is you got to a certain level of success as an agent, you would go and open an office. Now, I think a lot of agents are realising that they can have their own business unit within a business, and all they need to worry about is their listings and sales.
Well,
and they can
a lot
make
of the
a lot
time
more.
they're making more money than the guy that owns the business.
Absolutely.
And you know what's interesting? Probably a year and a half ago, Rob and I were really keeping an eye on, these models where it was, agents coming out, doing their own thing, giving them their own brand. And that was, is that the future? And it could still be. But what's interesting is that model hasn't really gathered as much momentum as I thought a lot of people would have thought. Mainly because I think when you actually are a serious real estate business and you're really penetrating a market, you want to give yourself every opportunity to win listings in a very competitive market. Now, what's going to do that? A strong brand behind you, that you happen to be your personal brand strong, the brand behind you strong, that you're winning on both fronts. Or do you want to be someone who's got a strong personal brand but may not have that other package that a potential seller buys into? So I think that
Complete package.
Complete package, or which one do you want?
And you got to remember, like for Dane and I, the whole thing for us is around how do we make each of the agents more successful in their marketplaces. So that's the number one focus every day for us and the team that we're with is how do we make it easier and better for the agents on the front line. So that's when you've got that mindset. I think it's difficult to do that if you're listing and selling yourself, because it's just a conflict, because where you spend a lot of your time and draw most of your income is not going to be from supporting the few agents that you've got. It's only when you can get to scale and you've got the ability to really focus in on that you see the difference.
I'd say to someone considering it though, because you don't want to be the principal on the other side of the fence saying, "Don't do what I do, guys."
That's right.
Because if someone's really got that dream, they should do it. They should pursue it. But how do you know whether you should do it? How do you know whether you'll like it? How do you know whether it's the right decision? I reckon a great little test is to go look around your office now and look at the agents in that office. Look at the associates and look at the personalities. Look at how they behave, look at how they interact, and ask yourself this question. Do I want to move from buyers and sellers as clients to now those people in my office are now my clients?
And you can't just sell them in 6 weeks and move on to the next. Like you're in with them for good.
And I'm accountable to them, and I lay awake at night worrying about them.
Yeah.
And I have to be answerable to them and responsible.
Can we talk about that for 1 second? Can we slide straight into there? Staying up at night, thinking about your staff, because I know I've had these issues. I know Daniel's had issues. I know we've all had issues in terms of thinking about our staff members in how are we making sure that they're happy? Are they happy with us? Are we doing the right things? Are Are we improving their life? Are we improving their business? And there's a lot of pressure that goes into high performers, and it's not just in business. It can be the pressures of relationships, the pressures of taking time off. How do you navigate those hard times where you're staying up at night and there's traumas keeping you up at night?
Well,
How
let me
are you
put it this way.
navigating that?
If I stop that, it's time to get out.
Yeah, that's right.
Because the
you
moment
stopped what?
if I
Caring.
stop caring and I stop laying awake at night, now it's not every night. I do have some good nights, but there's always, look, we've got 120 agents, and there's always going to be someone. And
going through
the
something.
best analogy I've ever heard on this is like Gilbert Anoka talks about the fire, right? So in any business, there's this fire burning, and call that the people that are connected. It's where the wood's dry. It's absolutely alight. There's always people that are fully connected to what you're doing. Their business is pumping. They bleed coastal. They are the cultural lights of your business.
They do what you say. They agree with it. They see the direction, the vision. They're connected, so they're right there.
But in any business, there's always people on the fringe of that are sort of connected. But then there's also people right on the fringe who might be the wet part of the log, that hasn't
So
pulled in.
the Amazonian forest, raining outside, fire in the middle. So in the middle it's combusting, it's hot, the wood's dry. Out on the outsides it's wet and it's cold.
What an analogy.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
so
Gilbert.
it doesn't stop there. So our job and the leaders, even the unspoken leaders, untitled leaders within our business, is to bring the people on the fringe in. And so it's an inclusive culture, right? So when we walk into the office every day, we're saying hello to everyone and we're checking the energy. We're kind of like, we don't just go and hide, and we are literally genuinely connected.
No, Rob met me downstairs, opened up the doors for us.
Yeah, that's right. So that whole connection piece. So, that's what no one says to you before you start a real estate business. Yeah. It's actually about the agent is your client, and that's how you've got to treat them. And they are a business unit that happens to stay at your hotel. It's a hotel for agents, and that's the way you got to look at it. So not just you though, your admin team, your contracts department, your marketing department, they've all got to be indoctrinated into that mentality that, we are the first officer, the captain. Rob's the captain with his mo, and I'm the first officer. And then you've got cabin crew. And then if someone wants a drink, you get them a drink. If someone wants, something done in their business, it's got to be done properly to the point where we would hire, data ninjas to help someone with their database cleanup. All those kinds of problems we've got to solve into someone's business.
So are you saying, as like going to the gym, you get sore muscles, part of running a team is going to have symptoms of stress and emotional
100%.
For sure.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. You've got to accept it. And
Yeah.
I remember I said to a guy once, George Hadgelis, absolute legend of Ray White Paddington, great guy. And I remember met him. Oh, yeah. Awesome Ray White, legend. I remember I was early on in the career, and I used to get calls from agents, and I used to catastrophize. Oh, they're leaving, every time. And I went and said to him, mate, like, how do I get rid of this? And he said exactly what I just said before. He said, mate, the moment that's gone, you should give the game away. Because if you stop caring, you won't make the phone call. You won't have the coffee. You won't tuck the person in. I mean, Mike Gordon talks about, the kitties in the kitty litter. That's really what running a business is. Like, when the kitty, when you've got kittens and they're all jumping out of the kitty litter, you're just putting them back, tucking them back in. And not getting them back to keep them in your business. You're getting them back on track. So they can actually go out there and keep productive, because so many people get distracted in their business.
And it's such a tough, you guys know, it's a tough game and it's a tough gig. So it is stressful, and you see it and you ride every wave of emotion as an agent with deals, and, people are relying on it for that settlement. And, so different agents are going to go through different stages where they need support and to be backed up when all that stuff's going on externally.
Can I ask a question? Have you guys ever had a disagreement between you two in terms of business moves, business decisions, personal relationship problems between you two? And if you have, how did you overcome it? And if you haven't, how would you overcome it?
Our biggest disagreements come in the last 2 weeks, where we're deciding on who's actually going to be playing at our Christmas party.
Fisher the last time. If it's something like Fisher again, I want an invite.
Well, we had Fisher a few years ago, which was like very lucky to have that.
When's this coming out?
Next week.
Yeah, probably next week.
Yeah, well,
We
yeah,
can keep it.
delay it.
Delay it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, we'll
Can we
delay
say it?
this.
Well, I guess
Yeah,
we
we'll
will.
delay, we can delay.
We've got the bag raiders this time, right?
Oh wow,
Which would be cool.
Holy smoke!
Yeah.
And interesting because
No one knows
and
yet.
it's funny
No one
because
knows yet.
we're doing it on the yacht club, which is where the Fisher party was.
Ah.
Last year we actually had Mark Seymour from Hunters and Collectors. Now you
won't
guys
know.
won't know who that is, right? 46
You know
years
Holy
old.
Grail? You know at the AFL Grand Final they play the Holy Grail?
You know him if
It's
you
that
heard
guy.
him. Anyway, so
Yeah.
I wanted
Yeah, everyone's like, "Oh, yeah."
I wanted the rock theme Christmas party, right?
Yeah.
And
Has that come back
Cool.
from your
That
20s?
was
or?
the dress up as well.
Yeah,
I
last
loved
year.
it. The dress up.
So
was
last
cool.
year I went to the team and I was so excited because I locked in Mark Seymour, who was Hunters and Collectors. Now anyone that's older than 40 will know who he is, right? He's a
50 maybe.
50. So I announced it to the team. The 50-year-old's like, yes, and then everyone's like, who? And then when he came, like, oh yeah, I know this song.
Yeah.
And it didn't have the same impact as the Fisher, because the funny thing about when Fisher came, like half the business didn't know who he was, but half that did know were that excited that the other people were like, oh, this must be something, you know? And then they were calling their grandchildren saying, oh, Fisher's here, and they couldn't believe it. So then we're back on the same boat that we had the party on for Fisher. So everyone's been saying who's coming. But so my initial thing was, oh, do we really need to do that? Because we've got another really cool DJ as well. And Rob was like, yeah, we do. And then I probably asked about 10 people who do they know the bag raiders, because I didn't want that repetition of that last time. And your reactions definitely made me feel like it's worth the money.
I might be coming.
Oh, you're welcome. But then, so I tell you what happened. I'm like, I spoke to Kim about it. Kim didn't want to do it either. But I said, no, Robbie really believes that this is actually a good thing, and I reckon he is right now. We're going to see.
Yeah,
So
we'll find out.
So I'm in this
We'll
position
find
where
out.
if it goes well done, I backed him. But if it doesn't, I just blame him.
What
Yeah.
if it's
If it goes well, it was your call.
Yeah, exactly right.
What if we're talking more serious than a
Yes.
Christmas
Honestly,
party?
I can say, I mean, my whole approach coming into the business was that this was the number one business for Harcourts. Dane and Kim had done an incredible job building a really big business. So although I'd had a career corporately, I still came in with the vision of, look, I'm not coming in to change anything. I'm coming in to learn and see how I can add support to what's already going well. So I think that's where it's worked pretty well. There hasn't been too many things that I've had the opinion that, Dane, you are 100% wrong with this. That's not the direction we would take. Because we do discuss different things and talk about it, but we haven't actually been misaligned with big decisions that we're going through.
And I think that's got to do with Rob's attitude and my attitude towards it, because no one comes in with this is what we're doing.
No.
There's a consultative, hey, what do you think of this?
Yeah.
And I think and it helps that we're both very aligned with, the DNA of what we are. We know, we both know what Coastal is. We both know what works for us. We both know our model. So, most of the time there's they're not disagreements. They're formulations of opinions.
I'm very lucky in the respect that at Manor Real Estate in the Hills, we've created a company where we've got 5 offices. We've got 6 or 7 directors now, where we're over 100 staff, and we've kept all the directors. It's an office where I've never seen directors actually just everyone's friends. There's no disagreements. Everything's working well, but we've seen businesses in the past where things have gone downhill and they've imploded. What would you say to, for example, a particular business that we may know of that imploded, not to name names, but it imploded and it was because of bad decision making? Do you think that could have been, stopped or been helped prior? Do you think you could?
I mean, without going into that one, because it's hard to know with,
Now
different
I'm intrigued. Are you
scenarios.
intrigued? I want to know what it is.
I think the big thing is you've got to keep reinventing and asking yourselves questions of, for us, a big decision, that rebrand is almost an example of showing that, you've got to be prepared to do the work and really look at what your business is doing in order to keep moving it forward and keep relevant, over the next decade, because there's no question, even to go through the change that we did whilst we're on the other side of it now, it was tough and it's scary. Is it going to work? Are people going to leave? Is the market going to connect with it? So you go through a pretty big change like that because you see, moving forward, or you see the direction longer term. So I think in terms of each business, I think it's important to go through those and it may not be a rebrand, but it's just looking at what you're doing really carefully and, challenging whether it's going to be right moving forward and how you're doing it. Because I think if you're staying the same, like what you're doing now isn't probably going to be relevant in 10 years. No. So, what's that? We've said it before, your business is becoming...
It becomes more irrelevant every year by 20%. So in 5 years, it's irrelevant.
Yeah. In that business, though, in my opinion, it had nothing to do with the actual business model. Like because we had killers, there were killers everywhere. It was more so the management not doing the right things.
So you know more internally in that case than I do. Okay. So
well, can I make a point on that? Because I definitely believe that the leadership and the character of leadership gets judged probably more than what you think. So it gets judged. People who aren't in your business that are considering joining because you develop a reputation in the market, but then internally it gets judged. So if all of a sudden Rob and I started like having long lunches, blowing things up our nose, playing around with staff, all the telltale signs that the cliche. That's where all the cliches start. It starts by having our shit together and making sure that we actually are. Leaders that walk our talk. I know sometimes people say, we don't want drugs at parties or we don't want this or whatever. But then they're the same people doing drugs at parties with their staff. It's like, well,
what are you doing?
You can't ask for that if you're doing that from the top, as an example. So I think that whole the other thing is, like, you go into business with someone now, right? And like we don't know in 5 years' time. Rob could go on a different path in his life. Dane could go down a path in his life. I've been in partnerships before where the person I was in partnership started going down a path and I didn't like it and I got out of it. And
do you think you could have stopped that path though?
No, because it was a personal journey that didn't align with my values.
Oh, they were going into
and it was showing up in work.
Yeah. How did that impact you?
Well, I had the agents in that business giving me that feedback. So then I had to make a decision. Is this what I stand for?
So they were affecting others.
And what ended up happening is we ended up going to that person and saying, hey, we don't want to be in business with you anymore. It's gone too far. So do you want to stay or do you want to go? We gave them the choice. Initially they said go and then they said stay. And then most of those people ended up coming back to Coastal anyway because they didn't want to be aligned as well.
Yeah.
They realised what was right and what was wrong.
And, maybe he's on a different journey now, but from my perspective, that wasn't working. And I think it's so easy to let that stuff go. Like the other thing is like internally, if you have something happen, like if something happens internally where someone crosses the line.
I think that's one thing that I would definitely say I've learned as well, because a lot of times, people will... particularly if someone's doing a lot of business, they'll, we'll just let this one go. But you can't, because as soon as you start letting that stuff go, it flows through the business. And if you don't kind of go towards that stuff, then people are judging that. You think they're not, and they're letting it go and, it's okay because, it's fine. But people all through the business are watching that if you let it slide.
They can see, 100%.
It can be one of the best leadership,
it can,
indicators of anyone when... I remember you and Morgan said to me once, you cannot call yourself a real estate principal until you've actually fired a top performer for bad behaviour.
Yeah, correct.
Wow. And I remember thinking, wow, because I'd just done it. And I thought, that was actually like really interesting. And
how did they take it?
Who, the top performer?
Yeah.
Oh, not well, because it's never a great conversation. No.
Do you mind me asking, in what particular sense were they doing something wrong?
Well, it was just crossing the line with... like how I expect someone at Coastal to act to the marketplace. I mean, there's an offer on a competitor on a colleague's property. There's an offer on your property, same buyer. Disparaging remarks, like got back to me. You can't do that.
No.
Like now, someone might say, "Oh, well, worse has happened in real estate businesses," but you don't always hear about it. So when you hear about it, and then you get feedback from the lawyer involved, you've got to act on it.
Yeah.
And it was just a case for me where I just couldn't I couldn't call myself the leader that I wanted to be if I let that go. It was just, and look, there's a fine line between a mistake and then an indicator of behaviour that you think's inherent.
Correct.
And sometimes you don't know. Sometimes you make these calls, and we're not always right. But you know, like I can tell you that the reaction from the team with that was you made the right call.
Was it one of the best calls you've made?
Probably earlier on, I had a call where someone actually, like I think I was probably 2 years in, and someone had actually done the wrong thing with a database, and like very, very good performer, and everyone was watching me. I actually felt the eyes on me.
A good performer, not that, you know, but at that stage of the career, that was a bigger.
That was probably harder.
Yeah.
Not harder in the sense that I didn't ever question it, but it was harder in a sense from an income perspective. I didn't even think about the income on the last one, but certainly that first one. But I can tell you, it really defined my leadership in the business, because people thought, okay, he's not just about money. He's not just about keeping people together for the sake of it. And I think we've demonstrated over the years that we don't make decisions just to finances come into it.
Yeah.
But they've got to be ethically aligned to your business, because we value harmony, we value culture, we value those things. It doesn't mean that we don't have normal cut and thrust real estate, things that happen in a real estate business. But
so you're glad you did it?
Absolutely, 100%. But also, equally, here's the irony. If I was on the other side of that guy, and if I was one of my competitors, I still would have employed him, because we've actually had it the other way, where we've had people who have made mistakes in previous businesses, untenable, can't stay there anymore. We've put them on, given them chances. And I can tell you now, one of the best examples of that is Ptolemy Stevens. Ptolemy Stevens.
I was looking him up. I'm like,
you were thinking about who it was.
I was asking, was it Ptolemy? Because surely it wasn't Ptolemy. It was the
No. Ptolemy's now a partner in our business.
Okay, I was going to say, Ptolemy's the...
No. He's a great example of giving someone an opportunity, and then that person making the best of it. You got to look at it this way: when someone's a genuine person and have made a mistake, even though you might not be able to manage that mistake, you got to ask yourself, if that person is a genuinely committed person and they're a good human that wants to get better.
Yeah.
I'd much rather have them on the other end of that behaviour, where they've learnt their lesson, which is what happened with Ptolemy. Because I kind of looked him in the eyes and thought, this guy's learned his lesson. He's got a point to prove. He's humble. I'll never forget where we met. Like, it was around the corner at a cafe. And I thought, this guy's actually, he's going to go through some darkness here, but he's going to come out the other end with something to prove. And the rest is history. He's one of our top agents. He's one of the best agents in the country.
He is. And he's got a willingness to learn, which is which is good.
And as a leader, like, that evolution's been interesting as well, because how he interacts with his teammates and how he represents the brand, and it's just it's a really good example of, sometimes you get someone on the other end of that spectrum. So the guy that I might have moved on 10 years ago, if I was a rival principal, I probably would have still employed him, because he would have learned his lesson. And you just got to make that call.
Personal question. Last night, I had to deal with some personal friends that are going through issues. Now, when you've got personal issues going on in your life, or things that are taking you away from business, how do you realign yourself? How do you manage personal issues, not your own, but other people's personal issues that are now starting to affect your life?
Great question. Well, that pretty much every time someone's behaving badly, it's normally because if you actually sit down and say, what's really going on, it's really not the issue that they're blowing up about in a business. It's normally something at home. It's normally, personal things they're going through. We have an in-house counselling opportunity in our business.
Really?
Well, when I say in-house, like, they're not physically here,
but they get offered it.
Anyone can go to a psychologist anytime, and we pay for it. It's
coastal, man,
and it's paid for by the company. It's anonymous, and there's like a panel, and like, we got that sort of out of the Rise initiative, where Chris Handley and many involved started the Rise initiative after the Christchurch, and there was this push for more awareness around mental health, and
that's unbelievable, man.
But I tell you what, it's from a humanity perspective, but from a business perspective, I tell you what, like, having people have somewhere to go where they can actually talk about, like, people will go there. People would go there for marriage bust-ups. People go there for anxiety. People go there for alcohol abuse. So they'll and it makes them. You know what? It comes down to our philosophy. We want them to be better humans for working here. And if we can do that, that's going to show up in their lives. And we want people to say Coastal was the best part of our lives.
How good is that?
Sorry to interrupt. Have you ever used the counsellor personally?
Yeah, I have.
What was that experience like?
I've had different experiences. So my mum used to go to this lady, and so your mum passes on your issues to you. My mum's no longer with us. I can say that. Yeah, thank you. And so I have definitely have over the years. And you can get good ones, and you can get not so good ones. I think it was really in my 20s where I started to get a bit of anxiety, right? And I'm like, oh, what is this? And when you're if you don't know what it is, and someone says anxiety, they're like, just have a drink. I'm like, no. This is actually different to that. And then that person really helped me frame it. I remember in my 20s going to someone and explaining. I literally thought I was going mad. And this lady said, no, that's a wave. It comes, deal with it. And even just that framework around it massively helped me. And then after my mum died, I went and saw someone. And it's funny because my brother's a psychiatrist, right? Which is different to a psychologist.
You wouldn't see him?
No way. He'd just say, harden up. And he's a forensic psychiatrist as well. So, hopefully I don't have to see him because it means I've committed mass murder or something. But so that the second person I went to, after my mum died, I remember walking away from that, rang my brother and said, that guy was so bad, right, that I actually feel better now because he's got more problems than me. So, wow. He was just horrible. Just, give me a book, Dane, read page 4 of that book. I think he was just getting that government tick-off thing,
Wow.
Yeah, so I've had bad experiences and good experiences with it. But a good it's funny because Americans talk about that. I see my shrink, they talk about it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be anything crazy. I know we were talking to one of our agents who's got both his parents that are not well, really not well. And he actually preemptively went and saw a psychologist.
Because it was there.
Which we provided. And he mentioned, we didn't even know about that, but he told us. I'm like, that is so cool.
Yeah.
Not obviously tragic with his mum and dad.
But it's great to know that we can support him when we're not there.
That's the best
personally. Yeah.
It's cool. Yeah. And I think modern workplaces now, it's kind of a given. I'd love to say that's something special, but I think the workplaces that we aspire to be that's kind of standard now.
Yeah.
How about businesses like Daniel's, where Daniel he's got a couple of staff now. He's growing, everything's building, but we don't have billions of dollars to throw at Nike shoes and Coastal bottles and shrinks and what have you. What would you be doing if you're in a position of a smaller business growing? What type of branding or support networks or things that you would do that's cost effective that would really support and help the people that are working within the business?
So my take, be interesting. I think we'll be aligned, but we'll see. But my take would be on, if you don't have the budget to do that stuff can come later. The most important thing is just the genuine care of the people within your business, because that's going to show up. If people are feeling good about working with you, they're feeling supported, you're doing stuff for them, you're getting around them, the team's sort of growing and building momentum.
People,
but I would like to think that if we hadn't have done any of this cool stuff and the shoes and that stuff's cool, but I don't think that's, I hope that's not the difference of what makes people stay here.
Not at all.
So do you know what I mean? So the most important thing.
If we thought that, we're in massive trouble.
Yeah, massive trouble. So I think that's the most important thing, is just to get that, get that nucleus of the team right and that care within your people. I think, to me, that's the critical part.
Yeah, I was going to say the best internal marketing you can ever do is a catch up, a one-on-one, and it's time. And we fall into this trap all the time as leaders. You think that you have to go and meet someone and look at their business plan and give them insights and say something smart. You don't at all. It's you just have to get in front of someone and ask them how they're going.
Yeah.
And is there anything I can do to help? I'd probably finish most conversations with, is there anything we can do to help you? And quite often it's no, I'm good. But sometimes, there is actually. And that's just the fact that they know you're there for that. I think that's really important. So one-on-ones with your team, not as in, here's my one-on-ones for the week, how many appraisals do you have?
But also
it's not a management thing. It's more of a check-in thing.
But being prepared for what's on the other side of it. If someone comes to you with something, you can't just hear it. You've actually got to action it and help. Yeah.
Sounds like you've got a good process for the staff in the business. For other people, where do you go to for your own guidance?
Yes, good question.
How are you navigating a big business whilst having a family, staying fit, healthy?
You got big
how are
arms,
you?
surfing.
Do you have leaders or mentors?
Yeah, well, one of my great mentors passed away, but I still learn from him. This is a few years ago, Don Marion, who was the founder of Remax, co-founder of Remax in Australia.
Wow.
So, it's funny because just because someone's no longer with you doesn't mean you can't draw on their wisdom. You know, like you can. What would he say in this situation? But I've got plenty of people that I talk to. Like I talk to a lot of the big leaders in real estate around Australia. And you know what's really interesting? They've got the exact same problems that everyone else has, you know?
Yeah.
So that's always good. So someone that's in your position, that's out of your market, that's going through a similar stage and cycle of business, I always find it really difficult. If you're talking to someone, if you're a $1 million rider and you're talking to someone who's just starting in real estate, that person's going to get a lot out of your conversation, but not necessarily the other way around. Not always, but talking to someone at a similar or even a bit above you, I think in terms of where they're at, is always a great litmus test. And they always say, like, any person that's successful, you ring them and ask them for a coffee or a catch up. You guys would know this better than anyone. Like they'll say yes. Every time. They always say yes every time, as long as you go about it in a humble way. So you got to go out and find it. I mean,
and I think the access to, with podcasts now, I mean, you got to find the right ones, because I think a lot of people can put a lot of stuff up now that's probably not really worth taking advice from. But if you find the right people, there's certain ones that, there's so much knowledge out there, but finding the right stuff is always good.
And then there's people like Brian White, right, who Rob and I go, what an absolute legend of the industry, and I've only met Brian a couple of times, don't really know him that well, but I know enough about that business and his sons and the management and the culture and the DNA of that business to go, I can learn a lot from that business without actually having to, like, their insatiable appetite for growth. Growth is oxygen, getting awesome, getting ambition around you and fostering that and creating opportunities for people. I think that's so they don't always have to be like physical conversations. They can be observations from afar where you go, I like that. I like what that person's doing or what that company's about.
When do you know when to put on the next person? Because when I was growing as an agent and I was putting on my first, second, third, and then fourth, I was backed by a company. They weren't paying for it, but I knew, hey, if something went haywire, I've got backing here. So like someone else in the team can take an associate.
You talking about as a salesperson?
As a sales agent.
Yeah.
Now, Daniel, obviously running his own business, paying for his own staff with no backing. How does he confidently, or any other agent or agency in that position, confidently make that decision to move forward and hire next?
Okay. So we've just done a full training session analysis on this, and we've been through heaps of different trial and error with teams. And
we just about have every team structure you can imagine.
Yeah, we do.
Perfect time,
and I think the thing for me is okay, so the first thing you have to ask yourself is, do you want to grow or do you want to be a lifestyle agent? Because if you're an individual agent and you're doing 20 to 30 sales on your own, you can do that.
And you're comfortable.
And you're happy.
Want that.
You can do that
days.
and you're highly profitable. You can do that and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. We've got plenty of those people at Coastal and they love it and they make a lot of money, but they're 20 to 30 sales a year roughly. Now, let's say you go, I'm happy with that. Cool. No, I don't. I want to grow. I want to grow. So the next step is, where people go wrong is they go from 20 to 30 sales. I'll go and hire someone. Oh, I met this person who wants to get in real estate. I'll give them a job. I really like them. They're like me. Yeah. It's a buddy.
I've done that before.
And now I'm going to get them to do all the prospecting.
Yeah.
I've done that
and this is what
before.
we hear. We go, oh, yeah, but I'm just going to get them to do the calls. Okay, cool. Let's see how that works, right? So then that person comes in and it doesn't work for a lot of reasons. I'm not saying it never works, but mostly it doesn't work because you can't delegate that part of your business, right?
I mean, the most important part of the business is actually finding the stock. So it's interesting that
What
the
if
first
a buyer's agent though? As a buyer's agent,
that'll come. So the thing is, you get that person in, and the mistake is they're my friend. They double up. You end up just having them prospect. Now, if that person is a great prospector and they do generate their own stock, they're not staying with you for very long. Do you know what I mean? So people have to go the other way around. The first step is to get a business manager, right? Someone who's actually
Business manager?
Yeah, so like an admin business manager. So someone who manages your database. Someone who makes sure that you're prospecting. Your prospecting vehicle and your calendar for marketing throughout the year is sorted. So all those inbuilt things. Someone to hand you a list of people to call. So the business manager is number one because
I need one of them.
So the business manager / admin person, right? Now that person then what they do is they then free your time up because they take away building and pests. They take away
The non-dollar
e-news.
productive
They take away the
stuff.
non-dollar productivity. That then frees you up to prospect. So then you have to be the lead agent on prospecting at the beginning, right?
Because you're going to be the best one at it. That's the reality.
So then that decision alone should get you to 30 to 40, right? Once you get to 30 to 40 deals, then you make a decision, do I like this? It's working for me, or then do I put an associate? And then the third person, including you, would be an associate. Then there could be another associate. Then once you're then going, okay, a lot of my time's handling buyer inquiry here.
Now we're absolutely humming.
There's buyer's agent. So we've just had an agent do this exact thing where he's gone business manager.
18 exclusives, currently running.
Yeah.
Whoa.
Business manager.
He's just ticked. He actually just told us this morning he's just ticked over 76 deals for the year.
Nice.
So he'll end up about 80 something. And he started with a business manager. Then he went to an associate. He's just employed a buyer's agent.
How many years did that take?
That's probably a 5-year journey.
Yeah,
5-year
would
journey.
be.
Yeah, it's a 5-year.
How many years as an associate before he did that too? Just for
That current associate's been with him like just.
No, I'm talking about before
2
he
years,
moved
just
to an
over 2
agent.
years.
2 years as an associate.
Oh, I don't. No. I think he started as his own agent.
Yeah, he started with that.
He started as his own agent?
Yeah, but he was with a previous company.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Not with us.
okay,
yeah.
good.
So he came in as a solitary agent
sense.
from a previous company, so he wasn't new.
Got that.
Came in,
Yeah.
did about 10, 15, 20 deals. Then he started to grow from there. So he's gone from, say, 10, 20 deals to 76 deals calendar year. And he'll get to 100 easily. But it's scary.
Yeah.
Like, it's scary because he goes, well, is this the right move? And then you've got to manage the existing team and go, how does this change your world
And
now?
it changes the dynamic.
But you've got to
you
make
gotta
sure
manage
that.
that.
So then, where we can help our team is because we've got some experience in taking people on journeys and leading. We can then identify to them. Well, this is how you've got to explain it to your team because most people wouldn't even think about. Oh, I'm going to put a buyer's agent on my associate, and my admin person might get a little bit disjointed about that. Most people wouldn't think about that.
Because you've got to remember, any decision that you make, everyone else is thinking, how does this impact me?
And of course, we know in advance that's a
Yeah.
conversation
That's
you need
actually
to
a good
have.
one. Because I know for one thing that I'm conscious about with another hire is, will it affect somebody on the team feeling that they're not as valued, that
Absolutely,
you're taking their role, that you're...
that's right.
So I've got a question for you both. Seeing as though you've got a level of success relative to why I'm up here, what perspective change or advice could you give to me that I may not have considered yet based on the level I'm at today? So you've got a brain years ahead with a lot more success. Knowing what you know now, if you could put that back into a 26-year-old head, one perspective change, what would that be?
Know what you want.
Yeah, I was going to say, to answer that, I'd need to know what it is you're striving for.
Yeah. So that it's funny. You both
Yeah.
you straight away like, well, what does he want?
Yeah.
Now, when you identify that, like you got to remember that the lyrics have already been written. You just got to sing the song. Like you know. Okay, I want to get. Say it might be. Well, what do you want? More agents, like more personal growth in your sales business, like
Yeah, there's a level of growth in the business I want to achieve, but then there's also other commercial growth I want to achieve as well with the podcast.
okay, great.
So a bit more of a combined approach.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Awesome. So once you identify that, you just have to take action and believe in yourself. I know that sounds like a real
Cliche.
but it's so true. Like you've just got to back yourself to go and do it, even
Yeah.
before you're ready. Like I always think about this one particular recruiting call that I made to someone before they joined the team, and I was driving out of that driveway, and I remember thinking all these feelings of insecurity, like, oh, why would they want to talk to me? But I did it anyway, and I kind of call it throwing yourself off the ledge. You know how like when you've ever bungee jumped or skydived, like it's so unnatural. It feels so unnatural, but when you do it, at the end of it, you go, geez, I'm glad I did that. You're pumped.
Wish I did it earlier.
Yeah, that's right. And it's no different to a phone call, prospecting call to a lesser extent, recruiting calls, same thing. It's throwing yourself off the ledge to go, remove how you feel. You're going to feel nervous, whatever, but it doesn't matter because even though you feel that way, you still have to take that action. And once you take that action, the feeling will catch up. It's like, oh, I'm glad I did that.
I think the thing as well, like thinking about your team and, what does it mean if you put someone else on? You've got to remember that if putting someone else on is aligned with your goals and where you want to go, then it'll work. And you've got to remember your team as well. They want to be part of something that's growing too. So as much as you can worry and dramatize about, I don't want to upset the apple cart and well, that's fine if you want your business to stay as it is. But if you want to grow it, you're going to have to, like, they're good conversations to have. They're good, tough conversations when it's about growth and it's about you getting to where you want to go. So as much as, you know, you don't want to upset them, you've got to be true to yourself in the direction that you want to go, or else it's not going to work anyway.
The better way to explain it is to be bold, even when you don't feel like it.
Bold when you don't feel like it.
Well, be bold because you might, you know, no one wakes, well, not everyone wakes up in the morning and goes, I'm going to be bold, you know? And then they're confidently being bold. You've got to be bold even though deep down you're feeling a little bit insecure, because everyone does that. Like anyone who says they're not scared of making calls or nervous, maybe there are some people out there who are just cyborgs, right, that just don't feel feelings. But most of us do feel those feelings. And I think that's what Jason Boone was saying in our interview. He said, it doesn't matter what Jason Boone wants to do today. What matters is, how does a world-class real estate agent need to act? And if I act like that, the results will come.
Yeah. Will they make the calls that I don't really feel like making today? And if they will, then that's what I got to do.
What would you do if you couldn't fail? Who would you call? What would you book?
That's really,
you know?
Yeah.
You'd start doing it. And that's what I'd say to my younger self. Just do it, you know, because
just have
that's how it happens.
So something that I'm curious about, from the total success pie you've achieved and accumulated, what part of that pie is giving you the most fulfillment?
It's a good question.
Great question.
Yeah.
Oh, and what part of that success pie would you, knowing what you know now, probably not pursue?
Yeah, well, that's a hard one. I mean, it doesn't come as an obvious, you know, off the cuff, but it turns up in little things. It turns up in little things, like, you know, when you run into someone who says, you know, I was here doing this 5 years ago, came to you guys, you backed me, now I'm doing this. Now, you remember, that's that person. Like, you can't take responsibility for the ones that go well and then take responsibility and then just say, well, the ones that didn't go well, that wasn't me, you know? Yeah. Ultimately, it's that person. But I'm proud of being able to provide an environment that allows that to happen. I think probably the environment and culture, I don't love the word culture because I think that's a really, you know, it's almost too strong a word, like culture. Like it's a country.
What do you call
I just call it environment. Like environment is what we actually are here for.
I think as well, I mean, you reflect back, you know, we did say on even Melbourne Cup Day this year, you sort of look around at the team and you think, this is incredible. Like, all these people are here, part of the business. There's different moments that you look back and reflect. I mean, that's probably not answering the question in terms of what are the little moments along the way, but there's definitely those times when you kind of have a look and you think, you know, this is actually really cool to be a part of.
Probably what I'm most proud of, I have to say, is I think it's the numbers tell us that we're one of the biggest real estate businesses in Australia. And I'll say that with, like, cautiously going, geez, you know, people think that you sound like a wanker.
So egotistical.
Yeah, exactly right. But I think we've done that in a way where if you met us, hopefully you don't think we act like that, act entitled or act like we, you know.
Well, it's one of the things I love. We always say we take our job seriously, but not ourselves. So we just want to be, you know, good people at the end of the day. And, you know, we've got a vehicle and having a great business in the background.
Mate, you had no idea who I was a few years ago when I came and asked you about the podcast. You had no idea what the podcast was. You had a 1 minute chat with me, had a good chat with me, and you were the nicest guy in the world, and you said yes. So 100%.
Yeah. So from your perspective, part of the success pie that's giving you a lot of fulfillment is helping create an environment for people to change. Would that then imply having a vision for growth is kind of essential for that to play out?
For someone else or for yourself?
Well, I guess hearing that from your perspective, like if I was to be a one-man band and not grow, I'm limiting my potential.
I mean, it has been for Dane's journey, but it depends what your journey is. Like, you're a growth.
I'm a growth person.
Guy,
so is Rob.
As am I. Yeah.
I'm not a runner. I'm a grower. Like, I'm not a maintainer. I'm a grower. But I tell you what, we don't do. We're not going to impose our expectation of what you should do on you. And we've learnt some lessons with that. Like, we had a guy recently that kind of drifted and did his own thing, like, you know, wasn't really all in on real estate. And we thought the right thing to do was to bring him back in and try and get him fired up about real estate again. Now, you would think that would be the right thing to do, but in this particular case, he didn't want to do that. That's not what he wanted to do. And he took that as if, like, we were coming from our agenda, which we were. If we look back, we actually... So we ended up having a chat with him and go, mate, you know what? You do you. And if you want to work 3 days a week or 2 days a week, as long as you're ethically aligned and you're professional, you go and live your life. You want to go and do a development over here or whatever? Great.
Loves it.
And he'll get back connected when he wants to get back connected.
That's right.
But just the fact that you checked in and acknowledged that, hey, we see you going down this path, whatever you want to do is fine, versus you're going down this path, that doesn't suit my agenda, come and earn me money.
Yeah.
That's not the right angle, you know?
Correct.
So I think you learn a bit with that. It's all about trying to uncover what is it that you really want from someone's perspective. And then it's got to be in the context of real estate, because that's why we're here. We're a real estate business. And if you have huge ambition in this industry, this is a great company to work for. If you want to plug into this business and be a lifestyle agent and, you know, do other things, and you can do that as well. Because if you look at the real estate industry, you know, as a snapshot, it's got all different personalities and motivation levels and commitment levels in it. Like it is made up. Not everyone's going to be high volume. You know, I want to speak at ARIC. Not everyone's going to want to do that. So our job is to have, you know, provided people are professionally and culturally aligned, then there's a place for them in our business.
What's your dream and vision now?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. You know what? It's interesting. Like, people ask me that, and like, Rob knows me well enough. Like, what's your 5-year plan? Like, I've never had a 5-year plan. In fact, I wrote a 10-year plan down when we first started, which was to grow $1 million a year GCI every year, and to grow by 100 managements a year every year for 10 years. Now, if that plan had have happened, I would have been. If you had said, Dane, you'll do $10 million GCI in your business in 10 years, and you'll have 1,000 managements, I would have signed that deal, and I would have said, that's all my dreams come true.
Yeah.
Right?
Happy days.
The reality is we're now just under 50 million GCI, and we're 2,000 managements, and it's been 13 years. So
Why did that happen though?
Well, it happened because I think sometimes we write these numbers down, but they're just arbitrary numbers. They're just like, I did that with no knowledge of what was involved.
But why do you think it changed from 10 million to millions and tens of millions? Why?
Because I think we were just because I think we just found a model that allowed us to service. Like, you got to remember too, like, we've got really awesome people that run different departments in our business, which allows us to do what we do. And I reckon it's about putting the right team together and putting the right vehicle together. And if you've got the right team and the right vehicle, and you've got, see, the thing is also, we've had 4 years of post-COVID, like, huge growth. So part of it, if you're being honest, is luck. Like, no one will say that, but if you have the right boat in the water at the right time, that's lucky.
But the other thing is, like, I've been in businesses where you're out there recruiting, going hard, trying to build it, and you know in the background they come on board and you're scrambling, trying to, like, you're not confident in what you're selling behind. So the big part of, and to that point, like, in order to be able to grow, if you've got a really strong backing behind the business that you actually genuinely believe if someone makes the move, they're going to be better off, then it completely changes the way that you're not so much going hard, recruit, come join, but if you're open to a conversation, you want to learn about what we're doing and how you can plug in and succeed, then we can do that. But it's you need the confidence of it behind you.
I often ask myself this question, and you would do as well. Kim, my wife, as well, asks this question. It's a really hard one because I don't actually know the answer. If I had to do this, say this was all taken away, and I had to do this again, could I do it? Like, could I get this business to this level from scratch if I had to start again? It's a really interesting question. I don't know. I really don't know, because I tell you why. The interesting thing about what we do as real estate principals is there's energy and there's humility, and there's you really have to humble yourself to do the work. And the biggest risk to any real estate principal is entitlement and complacency, arrogance, and all those things. When you won't go to what you think is a small thing and deal with it, when you won't turn up and you won't stay awake at night thinking about the welfare of your people, then I think it's almost over.
I think that's for agents too. Like, if you're not prepared to chase and constantly be chasing and do the dance every now and then, we all know what we have to go through. And it's like we've seen before, there's been a number of people that have wanted to move up here as agents that have been incredibly successful in other markets in the country. And they've come up here and almost, as a rite of passage, I've killed it down Sydney or Melbourne. I'm going to make this work here. And it hasn't worked out.
Why do you think that happened?
Because you've got to get back to really grinding and chasing. And, no one knows or cares anything about what you've done before. They care about what you can do for them right now. So unless you're willing to go there again, it's
The
Really
biggest
hard.
risk is that you stop caring.
Yeah.
And the moment you stop caring, you stop doing the things that you need to do, the humble things that you need to do.
So what if you're a buyer's agent? So for example, buyer's agent, Daniel, Sydney, Central Coast kills it. It's got all of them. What if he wanted to buy some more properties in Queensland, up on the Gold Coast? As a buyer's agent, do you think the business model is a lot different to the selling agent model where he can easily transact all along the East Coast?
Well, I think it's you're talking about growing a buyer's agent business. Yeah, I think that would be the same. If I was doing that, not that I profess to know intimately the details of that sector of the market, but we've seen a rise in buyer's agents on the Gold Coast, definitely in the last 5-10 years. I would approach it in the same way, where if I'm trying to provide a hotel for buyer's agents, right? So if I'm trying to find a vehicle for, rather than me go and do my own thing and, you know, be a independent buyer's agent where I have a brand and I catch and kill my own business on my own, what benefit is there to create a platform where there is an environment with a brand, with support, with
training.
tech, with training, a community of buyer's agents that come together under your brand, under your business, you know, basically that if I didn't go there, I wouldn't have the value that I get by joining your team.
So similar to what Harcourt's provided you.
Yeah, well, similar to what we provide our agents.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's right, exactly.
Correct.
So I think it's that approach, and how you do that. I think that's the awesome mystery you got to solve, right? That's the exciting part of what we do, because we're always talking about that. You know, what support can we give agents? What benefit can we give an agent? Like, we do a magazine every month, which is paid for by the company, which is a listing tool. And that magazine, we think, is a sticky part of our business, because you can take that magazine to a presentation, you can have it at open homes, and every property that we list every month goes into that magazine, which means if we're doing 250 open homes on the Gold Coast, you get in that magazine. That's a value add to a person that if they left our business, they wouldn't have that anymore. You know, so it's an extra sticky point, and that's one. There's got to be hundreds of them, you know, and part of it might be access to Rob, part of it might be access to me, part of it might be auctioneers, part of it might be in rooms, part of it might be pre-listing kits marketing, it might be access to coaches, it might be marketing. So there's all these things that we provide. Now, it's a buffet. Doesn't mean they're all going to eat it, but it's there. You know, and it's there, and it's...
And that's the big thing to know as well. Like, as you get bigger, not everyone, you can't force people to do, like, if you're wanting to build a big business with a lot of high performers, I think you've got to put on, like the buffet, put on a lot of things, but not expect everyone to want to take every part of it at the same time.
At what
because
point?
It just won't happen.
At what point do you start giving equity share?
That's a good question.
To what person? What and when?
Yeah, it's a great question. We're having that right now. And so
Does that scare you?
No, it used to, but not now. I see that as like critical, because if you don't do it, what's the alternative? My biggest fear, I'll tell you what's failure. Failure is an agent that's an awesome agent that's committed to your company, that wants to be part of something, that because you won't let them in, they go and start their own, not because they want to, but because you wouldn't let them
option.
in.
Yeah.
And then they go and open a real estate business they don't really want to open, but they're doing it because you wouldn't let them in. So our criteria is you've got to be with Coastal a certain amount of time. You've got to have a certain amount of performance, a minimum GCI, but you also got to bleed Coastal. You know, you've got to be really committed to our business.
You got to be the person that when you see someone out in that outside wet log in the Amazon in the office, you're bringing them back in. Yeah. So you're doing those little things that most people won't recognize or realize, but we see that stuff because it makes such a difference. And that to me is when someone's really committed to the business, when they're really trying to help everyone that's in it.
And we'll be having more partners roll out over the coming years. There's no doubt about that.
Question. I've just in February I officially launched Caliber Recruitment Talent. Now it's a talent agency or recruitment agency where these associates, property managers are going to be pre-trained, pre-qualified, disqualified as well, and we're only going to place good people, good associates, good property managers, because that's been the issue in the real estate space and recruitment space, in my opinion. Now, when it comes down to, I'm actually not going to be doing the recruitment, but just for the agents out there that are going to be looking to recruit and are trying to recruit, what are your top 3 tips to recruit an agent? One being the top performers, because an associate I think is a bit easier of a story. But if we're talking about
a principal recruiting agents,
Ptolemy.
Yeah, okay.
Maybe imagine one of your competitors tried to poach Ptolemy, or you tried to poach one of the big guys down here. What would you be saying to these people?
The first thing about recruitment you got to realise, it's not about your timing; it's about their timing.
Nothing.
And
to
even
do
the
with
word,
you.
even the word poach, which is a common word, right?
Yes.
I sort of prick. I think I wish it was that easy. I wish it was
Yeah.
that. I wish it was that easy to ring up someone and poach them. And in fact, the way you get them is the way you lose them. So if someone was to say, if I was to say, hey, would you join Coastal? Yeah, no, probably I'd love to. Like straight away.
Red flag.
Like red flag. Like because you can
What's
guarantee
going
that
on?
person's probably been to 3 other before, and they're seduced by the call. They're looking to blame their environment. The harder they are to get out of a business, the better they are, because they're obviously not leaving because they're blaming where they are. They're leaving because there's like, obviously something going on that's beyond their control, or the management's changed, or
The
whatever.
other thing to remember in that, it always
Yeah.
starts with a conversation. So I reckon 95% of the people that are in this business would have had a phone call from Dane or myself at one point.
Is it just hey, how are you? Or
Oh, well,
is it-
okay. So the first thing is go back to step. You asked, like, what do you do? You've got to have a list. Like, as a principal, do you have a list of agents that, not that you would recruit, but if they left their business tomorrow, you'd at least want to talk to them? Because you don't know them all. Like, so you can't really go, oh, well, that person, I've seen them, don't know them, I want to recruit them. No, you want to have a conversation with them, and you want to be on the shopping list when they leave. You might get that person on the list, you might interview them, and you might decide not to bring them on.
Yeah, that's right.
So the first one is they've got to be on the list. The second is they have to know that they're on your list. One of the biggest misconceptions people make is a top, I've got a good business. If a top performer leaves, they'll know, they'll
come to
call.
us.
And then what happens is that person doesn't know, because for a top agent to just ring you up out of the blue and say, hey, I'm leaving, would you join? Can I join? That's a vulnerable call. They're not going to make that call.
It doesn't happen.
They're going to jump to the lily pad that they've already got lined up. And it's normally because the relationship has already been gathered with that previous principal that's talking to them further down the line. So they have to be on you have to have a list. They have to be on, they have to know that you're on the list, and then you have to keep in touch until they're ready. It's not about when you're ready. It's when they're ready. And every person that's joined here is joined because they want to join when they're ready, not because Rob and I rang them and said, we want you now.
We're ready for you guys.
Yeah, we're ready for you guys. And it can be all different kinds of reasons why they leave. And sometimes it's because they feel stale. They don't feel like they're growing. They see what we're doing. They see what one of our team's doing. They want to be, they want to be part of something that's, more energy, more dynamic, whatever it is, right? So that conversation is really just, hey, Dane Atherton calling from Coastal, just calling to register my interest that if anything changed at your end and you want to make a move, I just want to be on the list. It's effectively what it is, right? And that person says,
super simple.
if you ring up and say, hey, I'm ringing to recruit you.
Or
Can I have a
even
coffee?
even worse, just giving you a call to see how you're going, and just
Touch
checking
base,
in.
compare
People
notes, and
tell me why you're ringing. You know why you're ringing. Like, at least tell me.
Some people have got this thing where they're like, I just want to collaborate with with other people in the industry and all that kind of stuff.
So coming back to the poaching part, guys, you talk about not applying pressure. We spoke off camera about not, saying, how's your day? How you going? Or like anything like that. You've also spoken about telling people to stay where they are as well, because they're in momentum. Now, you want to be on the shopping list, from my understanding, as time goes by and things may happen and they're in the position where they want to move and you want to be at the top of the shopping list. Now, as a real estate agent, as a buyer's agent, we follow up buyers and sellers. How often, I know it's going to be case by case, but how often would you be following up these agents?
I'd say at least every month or two.
Yeah,
it's a
for
contact.
Cool.
It's very important that it's not some canned e-news
And it's not
letter.
disingenuous.
It's
gotta be relevant.
It's got to be very much a personal. It's because you
What would
got to
be an
remember
example?
there's only around 50 on a list, right?
Yeah.
50 is a big list. So it's more like, do you see something? You see a good listing?
Yeah.
Well done. You hear about they missed one, bad luck. Whatever it is, it's like it's the contact to keep in touch with someone. You read something in an article that you think there was something you're talking to them about that is interesting in sharing. share that.
I've even had someone I've been talking to, and I don't actually think we're ever going to get them, but been talking to for a while, and quite often we'll ask about, you guys are a big business. I've gone through this with my team. What would you do? And just talk them through it. So I don't think that'll ever change. Is it the tail end sort of the career? But you just talk to them about things that are relevant to them.
If someone's genuinely happy, loving their environment, doing well, they shouldn't leave their business. They should stay where they are. Good people know that. But they also know that if the business has changed, right? So leadership changes, energy changes. The other thing is their major competitor could have just been recruited into that office, and something goes on, and they don't like the way leadership handles it. There's so many things that can happen.
Yeah.
So therefore, if you keep in touch with them, what happens is something will happen one day, and you will get a call if you're doing your job because of your prior relationship. No different to a potential vendor. You're becoming their agent before they need one. You're becoming their principal before they need one.
Yeah, that's right.
And what you're doing is just keeping in touch. So when that moment arrives, hopefully you get the call, and then you still don't get them. You then go into a listing presentation or a recruiting presentation, where that's when we are on. And that's when we're putting offers forward. We're getting really we now need to be on.
We're into it. I would say to you, in terms of, looking at who to talk to, do you call them, don't you call them? Just have the conversation. You got nothing to lose. And you don't know what people are going to want. Some people are they may be happy and doing well on their own, but they might want to be aligned with you. They might get a lot of energy around what you're doing. They might want to be, part of the journey that you've got and just have someone to talk to. So I wouldn't discount what you've got by thinking that you're not worthy of the call. Just make the call. A lot of the times people who join you won't be for what you expect.
I tell you the other thing which we should disclose, because this goes to the, how we're able to actually handle what we can handle, is that we don't do new people.
No.
Really?
New people.
At all.
New people.
At all?
Yeah.
What about, how I was talking about the caliber talent? What happens if it was pre-trained associate, but hadn't been in
associates
leadership?
within a team.
Associates are fine. An associate joining an agent, different. But we don't do brand new salespeople, and we don't do a brand new associate would have to be really sharp, contender to get a gig with one of our agents. We have Katrina Maddig, our business manager, who does all the recruitment and hiring and firing of associates, PAs. She's amazing at that. But we don't do that. Now, the thought of us, if we had 10 new starters right now, we would be stressed out of our minds. Not only that, we don't like it. We're not good at it. It's not our job. There's plenty of other great agencies they can go and start, get some great training. We won't mention any names, but there's some great training in other franchise groups. They're our preferred supplier. We joke about that. But they'll go and get trained up, and what will happen is they'll either stay where they're at, or they'll get to a point where they're like, okay, I'm an established agent now. Once they become an established agent with a good reputation, that's when they become on our radar.
But that's when we can really help.
That's right.
When we
can add value to them.
If you're doing 200, 300 GCI, you want to go to 5, 750, $1 million, that's where we have experience and expertise to help do it.
And that's about knowing who you are.
Yeah.
We are not trainers of new people. I tried it. I don't like it.
Yeah.
I'm not good at it.
You're here to grow.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot about recruiting for others. What about the strategy for recruiting for yourself? What's your exit strategy with the business?
I don't have a exit strategy as such, because I think the best exit strategy is just build an amazing business, and then one day you don't want to go and be in it anymore. If you wake up, someone will want to buy
What's
it if it's a good
amazing
business.
look like for you?
Well, just continuing to grow at a sustainable level with good retention of property management, good retention of people, and good profit margins. If you can grow a business like that, then someone's going to want to buy it. Maybe Robbie will buy the whole lot one day.
So is your exit strategy, what we were talking about before, is when you wake up or when you're going to bed and you don't care? You don't sleep.
Yeah.
You can just go to sleep and not
Yeah,
care.
you know what?
Is
You're
that-
spot
is that
on.
the time?
Yeah, spot on. The day that I wake up where I don't care, you're 100%. If I wake up a week in a row, I'm going to be like, Robbie, I'm worried here. But you know what? He'll notice it.
Yeah.
It won't. I'll probably be the last to notice it.
Yeah.
So you're not necessarily forecasting a future goal which you're working towards. You're more just playing what's in front of you, but growing and
We've got a magic number of 100 million
100 million.
GCI, right? Now,
Why 100? Why not 200?
yeah, it's a good question because
Well, it might be once we get there.
it's the next stop. It's like
the
why
next
not?
logical step.
Why not Noosa? Because you got to get to Brisbane first. It's on the way. So it's like it's just the next sort of road.
That was
road
my
post.
next question. Is Coastal just going to stay here?
I can say yes to
Yeah.
that. Yeah, Coastal's
We're
the
very
goal.
happy
yeah.
here.
And I reckon
We've
that's
got-
part of our discipline, right? Is that we don't want to be Now,
I've been on a roll before when I'm on the plane, going to pop into businesses in and out, and you can't have genuine impact when you're calling in for 5 minutes. Like we want
5 minutes every couple of months.
Yeah, like it.
Best
How
business
can?
alive,
Yeah, but how can you do that? Like you can't actually have an impact, and it's not as fulfilling. Like to actually be in the business and run it, you got to be there. And for us, driving to each office and just having it within reach, that's.
Do you think that's
what we
why
wanna do.
franchises might pull back a lot more these days? Do you
I
think,
don't know about that. I mean, franchising, I think there's, like we sort of spoke about earlier, franchising's definitely still got a really relevant place.
Sure.
For us, it just was, we were in a different stage for where that was.
Do you think it's going to slow down, for
Franchising?
No, I think the good ones will get better.
Yeah.
Yep.
And
Yeah,
I think
agree with that.
the B and C tiers will struggle.
Cool.
What advice do you have to me about buying property management books?
Well, we bought 2 in our whole career in 13 years. One was strategic because it was a neighbouring Harcourt's office where we really liked the people.
Makes sense.
And it was up the road. They came in. Probably one of the best decisions we ever made. Awesome.
the
Grant and
owners
Cassandra
still know
Stevens. They were awesome people, still with us today. And the second one was the most recent, which was the Henderson's purchase. So the Professionals Henderson's is a business that's been around for like 40, 50 years. John Henderson, no longer with us, absolute industry legend on the Gold Coast. His sons, Andrew and Luke, huge reputation in the marketplace. I was tipped off that they might be selling, rang them, and basically got the, good on you sort of thing. And then 24 hours later, they actually called back and said, well,
Wow.
the reason we're a bit aloof is because we're a fair way down the path with someone else. But I think the whole coastal rebrand, I think, the fact that I've known those guys for a long time, I think that made us a more attractive proposition for us to want to bring their team. Because one thing you don't think about when you're selling your business, and now I thought about it from their perspective, I'm not selling a business, so I didn't think of this, is that you really want your team to go to a good home.
Yeah.
Like the money's going to be the same, right?
Yeah.
Wherever you go. It's like, where do you want your team to go? So I really think that really helped us with that transaction because the way that we treat our team, I think was observed by these leaders who are also great guys and they ran an awesome business. So that business came with other options. When I'm looking to buy a rent roll or a business, I always want X factor. I don't just want a straight rent roll. X factor, and I don't want to buy a rent roll off a competitor who then stays a competitor. That then 3 years time when the restrictions up, they're back into you and they're competing against you. I want someone who genuinely wants to see your business thrive when they sell to you, and I also want the X factor. What's X factor? Salespeople. Now, there's no guarantees for salespeople, but if you get access to salespeople and you can bring salespeople into your business as a result of that, then that's a bonus. That's an X factor. And sponsorship in this case. So
that's true.
these guys actually had very deep-rooted connections with surf clubs. And no one can get into the surf clubs because they're in there. So their introduction into that, Nobby's Beach, Mermaid Beach, and Miami in particular, now when you drive down that marketplace, you'll see coastal signs on the surf clubs, which came from their reputation. So these guys are awesomely regarded in the community, and it's actually an honour to have them in the business. They're really good guys, really good team. So to have that happen and sort of not buy their reputation, because you can never do that, but them joining us is
just a
actually
great
it's an
alignment.
endorsement on our business, and we don't take that for granted.
But it's not something that we're sitting down discussing what's an acquisition we can go after. This
Do you
is
have an
something that
acquisition
came.
list like you do recruiting?
No,
No,
we don't.
you
No,
don't.
we don't. No, that's more organic. Like
Yeah, gotcha.
because reality is, unless they're sellers,
yeah.
it's not worth.
No.
Me
time.
going and
Yeah,
ringing
yeah,
people to
it's not
say,
the
do you
time.
want to sell, when I'm not necessarily an active accumulator of rent rolls. And that, to go to that point before, you've got to want someone that wants to see you go well.
Yeah.
You don't want someone that just wants the money, that takes your money and then leaves. We've actually been the beneficiary of rent rolls transacting for that reason, and then we've actually gotten managements because the transaction happened, and then the person who bought it didn't look after the team, didn't transition it well. So then we've actually benefited on the other way. So we've seen what can happen when it's all not aligned with those transitions.
So I've heard there is a business on the Gold Coast that's about to sell up. Out of curiosity, is this something you'd look at? Like, would you look at buying a business where there's a rent roll and salespeople? And the reason I ask that is, if you were to do that, what would you be thinking about the risk of that potential business partner coming into the business, have you ever had disagreements with?
Well, now I want to know who this is, but you can't say.
We'll talk off camera.
But we look at everything case by case.
Yeah,
you know, like definitely we would be open to that. And I think as you get, when you've got a strong brand in the market, and I think there's definitely going to be, there's other businesses on the Gold Coast that I think are going to be options for that as well, where you're going to have smaller operators that don't want to do it anymore. They've made a lot of money. They wake up that day and have that moment where they don't care and they don't want to do it anymore. So for them, selling into a bigger business, tucking in, running their own sales team, bringing their people with them, selling the rent roll, maturing that asset, releasing some funds, great option for a lot of people.
Out of curiosity, what happens if, and this is all hypotheticals, if you bought
A few of your hypotheticals don't seem just hypothetical.
If you bought this business, and let's say, for example, this particular principal had 5% share, whatever it may be, but there became a disagreement between yourselves and that business partner. What happens?
Well, there's a partnership agreement. So there's a partnership agreement in place where you have, final say. You've got the board. You can make decisions. Now, in saying that, we've had experience with this where, you can't just we've had with partnership officers, we've had want to go this way, want to go that way, but we would never force that hand.
No.
Like you have to make sure that it's collaborative. So if generally speaking, if we're not in a unanimous agreement on a big decision, then we just won't go down that path, because the last thing we want to do is make a decision to override someone when they feel really strongly about it. So you're better off letting it go, unless it's for the survival of the company or something, dire like that. Yeah. But going into a business, there's always a partnership agreement and a shareholders agreement, which then controls the governance of how that board votes.
And that helps you safeguard yourself and you feel safe and protected.
It does, but you know what? Someone said to me once, if you have to use that, you're actually in trouble.
Yeah.
So
if you're actually pulling that thing out, it's turned
if you're referring
sour.
to section 4.1 of the partnership agreement, you've got a problem.
In big trouble.
Out of curiosity, is there any shareholders agreements in this company then? Like in terms of that type of stuff?
Yeah, well there is. There's Rob's, there's mine.
So you're talking about pulling it out after.
Oh no, we've never had to do that.
Sorry, I've misinterpreted what you said.
Yeah, we've never had to do that.
No, but if you had to, what we were saying, you'd be in a bad position.
Yeah.
Well, guys, my last question, just being conscious of time, we've talked a bit about some of the processes and success tools and experiences. I'm curious, what's been some of the biggest learnings? I want to say failures because it's part of the journey, but what's been some of the biggest learnings you've gone through that, if you would just share, would add some value?
I'll go first on that. The big thing for me is know what you're good at, know what your business is, and stay disciplined enough to do that. Because I think there's so many distractions that come at you from left, right, and center. And there's a lot of things that in the moment you can feel good. Like, I've got to this point, I can go and have a look at that and deal with that. And you've just got to keep humble and doing the things that you've done to get you there, and know what that is and stay on that track. So to me, that would be the biggest learning in this business that I've observed, is you just got to keep focused on what it is that you know is going to work.
Yeah, I've got probably two. One is when you sense that someone's not right, go towards them early.
Yeah, that's good.
Because if you're sensing it, even if you're wrong, there's no harm in showing
Normally
that you care.
You're right.
Because when you let things fester, that's when someone feels neglected, and then you'll wake up one day and they're not there anymore, and you wonder why. So go towards something. Go ugly early. Pick up the rock to see the spider, whatever you want to call it. Go towards stuff. The other one is that I've learned is on exit, when someone leaves your business. And look, anyone that has got a business has had people leave. We've probably got one of the highest retention rates of any business, but you still have people leave. They go and pursue their own dreams, or and we always say it's our fault. Like if someone leaves this business,
we miss something.
The biggest cliche in real estate is the moment someone leaves the business, they've gone from being your best friend to all of a sudden they're the worst person in the world.
It's amazing.
And I
just cut them
it's
off.
something that I'm really
They're
passionate
idiots.
about. I can't stand it. I think it's disgusting. And I think that the way people get treated on exits for real estate in general are horrible.
Yeah, it is bad.
And if that happened in the corporate world, like they'd probably get sued. Like if that happened at Westpac, someone went from Westpac to Commonwealth Bank, and some of the things that got said, or it just people don't take it as personally in those big companies, but for some reason in real estate, it's got a really bad way about it. And I've learnt that lesson, because when someone leaves, you're hurt. Right?
You hurt or they hurt?
Well, you're
Both.
hurt.
Yeah.
They're not as hurt. Well, they can be, but most of the time you're hurt. So your ego kicks in. And
But I mean, you hurt because you probably know you've let something slip at some point. And you haven't dealt with it.
And I've
part of
had
it.
a couple of examples in my life where if I think I've done the wrong thing, I normally try and go back and recorrect it. And I'll share the story where we had a great agent leave us who was a gun, absolute gun, but clearly heading in his own way. Right? I'm not going to mention any names, but you can guess, just like you didn't before. So he went and started his own brand, right? And I was hurt because I thought this was the guy that I really backed him and all those kinds of things, but he didn't owe me anything really, right? He went and opened a business. Now I had an agreement with him for a while with marketing where I'd give him some marketing on properties if he needed it for the big stuff. So he was about 20 grand like in debt to me. And when he left, I'm like, I'm going to keep that. Like I'm going to get that back. So I retained the 20 off his comm, right? And he wasn't happy about that, but he accepted it. And then I thought about it 3 months later, and I think I walked past him, and I had my head down, and I was like, that's not cool. What's going on there? And I remember saying to Rob, and this is great about having a great business partner, I said to Rob, I'm going to give that money back to him because I actually, to be honest, I was hurt, and I probably just wanted to win. And I want to be able to walk past this guy and I want to be able to watch him thrive in his career and go, you know what? I did the right thing. And I didn't do it for him. I did it for me. So I rang him back and I said, mate, I'm going to give you that money back. And I think he was quite shocked. And he took it. No hesitation. But I was glad because now I see him all the time. I talk to him.
I know this story.
Okay.
And you've that's true leadership.
Yeah.
There's so much respect there for you.
Oh, that's good. I'm glad that you know that because he's a good guy.
Yeah.
And I feel good. And it's funny now I'm going back.
I know about a situation.
In the situation. Yeah.
I know about a situation, and I heard the fact that you'd rectified an issue that you'd recognized yourself, and I'm like, damn, like Dane Atherton doing that. I'm like, geez, that's saying something about him.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, we're all going to get triggered and do something which we, in hindsight, may have not done the same thing, right?
Yeah.
It's funny, we had a guy join us about 5 years ago, and he asked me about a guy that had left. And he said, oh, what about this guy? He left, gone to a competitor and done really well. And I said, yeah, that was my fault. He said, what do you mean? I said, well, he'd done a big deal. He got a bit distracted. I saw it happen. I didn't go towards him, like I was saying before. I didn't get him back re-engaged. And you know what? That's my fault. I have to own that. And he's doing really well, and I'm really happy for him. And he said to me, like, after he joined our team, and I said, what was one of the reasons why you joined? And he said, when you said that, he goes, you didn't give me the standard, he failed, he let you down, you sacked him, which is what everyone says. You owned it. And I'm like, well, if you own it, like there's nowhere to go. It's like when a client complains, there's no excuses for that. I apologise.
Yeah.
Straight away, the conversation changes. If you're trying to kind of explain it and say, well, there's two sides to the story. No, we own that and we're sorry and I'll fix it. That's so much more powerful than saying, an excuse, which is all that it is. And I think that's an example of like now when we go to recruit, 13 years ago, we'd dig it into the competitors and say, but now we actually find like we respect our competitors. And it doesn't mean that, we're not super competitive. We love winning. Of course we do. But you don't win by actually digging the boot in because I think people are so smart.
We just dig with respect now.
We do it with respect, but we don't. We actually acknowledge that we've got great competitors, and they're awesome. Some of our competitors are red hot.
Oh, great!
And they really are, and it's awesome. But it doesn't mean we can't be red hot, and it doesn't mean.
But the thing is, the better they are, the better we get.
100%
like if you don't,
everyone.
if no one's any good, like so it's good.
That's
you
why
want to
you
have
got the
good
Central
competitors.
Coast and everyone doesn't answer their phone calls.
But nothing unites like a common enemy. I won't mention any names again, but we've had a new player come to town. And I heard about an agent from a rival agency that's thinking about joining. So I rang the rival principal and said, "Hey, just give me the heads up." And he appreciated it, right? Because I thought, no, let's stick together. Like it was pretty cool. But I think it's all that was just a fun little, little tip off. He already knew about it. He was already all over it. But I think he really appreciated that.
Mate, just with timing, my last question is actually we can cut this if it gets too personal. It's for you, Rob.
Yeah, cool.
You were CEO of a major company. You decided to leave his CEO's position to take up a position at a a state level job. Why?
So when I went from the CEO of Harcourts New South Wales and then went into the office in Lower North Shore, is that what you mean? Yeah.
Yeah. Or the first app. And then you came here. So I did forget about that, actually. I forgot about that middle part.
Yeah, so that office was wanting to get in. So that was a big lesson for me in business and going into partnership with the right people. So that went into something that wasn't aligned in terms of where we were at and the direction that we wanted to take. So when I got out of that, I actually went over to the US. And so that was, so heading up North America. And that for me was so that was sort of a rebuild and it was an interesting thing, cool experience to see how that worked. And then, back with Harcourts and
like you're taking up these big, huge national, international positions.
Yeah.
And then
I went from that to then CEO of Harcourts in which was working out of Brisbane. But I wanted to have more impact in a business every day.
Is that
so?
Right?
And I wanted to have the opportunity to get equity in something and something that I could have an impact on. And I just didn't feel that where I was aligned to where I wanted to go. I'd known Dane for 15 or so years when he was Atherton coaching.
When he was Ray White.
I was Ray White Adelaide. And Dane,
Ray White.
I was Ray White Adelaide and Dane was Atherton coaching and he came and did an auction training session for us. So that was back in the day.
Way back.
So and I'd always looked up to what Dane.
I thought he was
had
Tom
built.
Cruise when I first saw him. Who's this guy?
So that's how that. We'd been talking a lot. I mean, over the years, I'd spoken to Dane about advice, what he was doing in the business, how things were going, and there was it was funny. We'd kind of got to a point where we were like, right, we're both ready to do it. Let's go. I'm coming down. And I reckon it was a month, COVID hit, and we were like, hang on a second, let's just pump the brakes for a minute, see how this all plays out.
Yeah, but tell the story when we made. It's funny how this all comes back to surfing.
It was during COVID, and then we said, "Oh, well, let's just meet. We'll have a chat about it, and we'll go for a surf." And we met out the front, and went for a surf. And the waves were good.
Yeah.
We were going to go out for half an hour. I reckon we surfed for 2.5 hours, and we were just like, we just came in.
It's got to happen.
We didn't even need to talk about what was going on.
You didn't even talk about any of it.
You're
talking about the waves.
Yeah, exactly. So so that was cool. But no, that was the main motivator for me was actually and I wanted to have a business where there was leadership in that business that was still energetic and going somewhere and being part of something that was on a journey and that I saw a lot of what was happening down here. So awesome. that was the reason for wanting to make the move.
Super cool.
And if you had said to us back then that we'd be the official real estate partner for the WSL.
Yeah.
And now a sponsor of the championship tour event and a sponsor of a professional surfer, Liam O'Brien. We wouldn't have believed that. So to have a brand that we can transport across those genres are really cool.
Guys, congratulations on all the success and thank you so much for going in depth in this podcast. I think
we really appreciate it.
Ourselves, the listeners, I think we're all going to really, really appreciate that.
Pleasure, guys.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.